Hey y'all, welcome back to On Their Birthday. This is our third episode. Wow, I can't even believe that it's already the third episode. It feels like we just got started and still feels like I've been doing this for a little while. But nevertheless, I'm still excited to be here. Today's episode is all about Bob Marley. As I was researching his life, it just kept occurring to me what amazing and crazy life that he led, and it's just absolutely beautiful and inspiring, and I hope that at the end of this episode you feel the same way that I do. But if there's anything that I somehow missed, there's a lot of information and I'm sure I missed a few things, but if there's anything I miss on Bob Marley or even in the future, please feel free to write into our email ontheirbirthday@gmail.com. I'll go ahead and just hop right into Bob Marley. Robert Nesta Marley was born on February 6, 1945, to parents Norval Sinclair Marley and Cedella Malcolm. Some sources say that he was named Nesta Robert Marley at birth, but a Jamaican passport official revised it for him when he was a boy. The officers said it was because Nesta sounded like a girl's name, but little did he know that Nesta actually meant wise messenger, which, if you ask me, I think that's a perfect name for Bob Marley. Bob was born in 9 Miles St. Ann Parish, Jamaica, at the farm of his maternal grandfather. His father, Norval, was from England and was in Jamaica as a plantation overseer. He claimed that he had previously been a captain in the Royal Marines, a branch of the military in the United Kingdom. Norval married Cedella in 1944 when she was only 18 years old, when he was nearly 60. Norval was the financial support for Cedella and their child, Bob, but because of his work, he traveled frequently and hardly saw them. In 1955, when Bob was only 10 years old, Norval died of a heart attack at age 70. Cedella went on to marry Edward Booker and gave Bob 2 half-brothers. However, before her marriage to Booker, Cedella had given birth to a daughter with Thaddeus Livingston, the father of Neville Livingston, also known as Bunny Wailer. Now, Bob and Bunny Wailer had been childhood friends in 9 Mile. They began playing music together while at Stepney Primary and Junior High School. Bob and his mother moved to Trenchtown, Kingston, the capital of Jamaica, when he was only 12. This is when Cedella and Thaddeus had their daughter together, making Bob and Bunny brothers to a younger sister. This only propelled Bob and Bunny to more musical explorations. Because their main focus was just to be a vocal group, they didn't know how to play any instruments at the time. So since he lived close by, Joe Higgs of Higgs and Wilson was a big encouragement to Bob and began to teach him guitar. In February 1962, Bob recorded 4 songs at Federal Studios with Leslie Kong, a music producer and owner of the record label Beverly's. These songs were Judge Not, Do You Still Love Me, Terror, and 1 Cup of Coffee, which you heard just a moment ago. The latter one being released on Beverly's under the pseudonym of Bobby Martell. Now, Bob and Bunny had been hearing the latest R&B from the United States and new ska music, a genre of music combining rhythms from Jamaica and the Caribbean, punk rock, and horn sections. This is when they brought Peter Tosh in to form their vocal group. In 1963, they formed the group The Teenagers alongside Junior Braithwaite, Beverly Kelso, and Cherry Smith, later changing their name to the Wailing Rude Boys, then to the Wailing Wailers. At this time, they had caught the attention of record producer Coxsone Dodd. The band finally transitioned their name to the Wailers. Their single, Simmer Down, became a Jamaican #1 in February of 1964, and it's estimated that it sold 70,000 copies. The Wailers were regularly recording and quickly found themselves working with established Jamaican musicians such as Ernest Franklin, keyboardist Jackie Mittoo, and saxophonist Roland Alfonso. Despite this, Braithwaite, Kelso, and Smith made the decision to leave the Wailers, all by 1966. This left the original trio of Bob, Bunny Wailer, and Peter Tosh. In the mid-1960s, the Soulettes, a group made of Rita Anderson, her cousin Constantine Dream Walker, and Marlene Precious Gifford, was managed and mentored by Bob. Because they were working together so closely, it's no surprise that Rita and Bob fell in love. By 1966, they were married. They moved to Wilmington, Delaware, near his mother, and he worked for a short time as a forklift operator on an assembly line for Chrysler, even going by the alias Donald Marley. When he returned to Jamaica, Bob formally converted from Catholicism to Rastafari, a religion that began in Jamaica in the 1930s and began growing his well-known dreadlocks. Bob and Dodd, his producer, had a financial disagreement, causing Bob to team up with Lee Scratch Perry and his band The Upsetters. They recorded what is said to be the Wailers' finest work. After less than a year, Bob and Perry split regarding recording rights, but they still continued working together. In 1969, there was a new slow wave of Jamaican music, reggae. Bob went to Leslie Kong, who combined the Wailers with the studio musicians, Beverly's All-Stars. The songs that were recorded released as the album The Best of the Wailers. Tracks included were Soul Shakedown Party, Stop That Train, Caution, Soon Come, Can't You See, and many more. In 1968, Bob and Rita visited songwriter Jimmy Norman and had a 3-day jam session. This resulted in a 24-minute tape of Bob performing several compositions of his own and of Norman and co-writer Al Pyfrom. This tape was seen as an effort to break him into the charts in the U.S., as it was influenced more by pop than reggae. Between the years of 1968 and 1972, Bob and Rita Marley, alongside Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer, recut old tracks in an attempt to commercialize the sound of the Wailers. Bunny later said that those songs were only ever meant to be demos for record companies and should never be released as an album. In 1972, Bob signed with CBS Records in London and began on a UK tour with Johnny Nash, the soul singer. The Wailers saw the chance while in London to talk with Brent Clark, their road manager, to introduce them to Chris Blackwell. Blackwell was the founder of Island Records. The Wailers had the intention to discuss the royalties Blackwell had acquired when he licensed some of the releases done while with Cox and Dodd. However, this meeting took a turn. Instead of royalties, the Wailers were offered £4,000 to record an album. Blackwell had just lost Jimmy Cliff, the label's top reggae star, not much earlier, and was ready to get the next musician in. The Wailers returned to Jamaica to record at Harry J's in Kingston, resulting in the album Catch a Fire. The album was primarily recorded on an 8-track and marked the first time a reggae band had the same access as their rock and roll peers to the state-of-the-art studio. Bob traveled to London so that he could supervise Blackwell's overdubbing of the album, including tempering the mix from the bass-heavy sound and even omitting 2 tracks. Catch a Fire was released in April of 1973. It was packaged like a rock record, featuring a unique Zippo lighter lift top. It initially sold 14,000 units and received positive reviews. Later that year, the album Burnin' was released, featuring the song I Shot the Sheriff. Now, here's a little fun fact for your Bob Marley trivia night. Eric Clapton was given this album and was so impressed that he chose to record a cover version of the song I Shot the Sheriff, which happened to become his first U.S. hit since Layla. I guess that wasn't really a Bob Marley trivia as it was an Eric Clapton trivia, but anyways. The audience response was much bigger on the Burnin' album more than Catch a Fire because it catered more towards reggae and rock audiences. During all of this, Blackwell gifted Bob his home in Kingston and the company headquarters known as Island House. This became Bob's home and office. The Wailers, after the success of the album, were scheduled to open 17 shows for Sly and the Family Stone on their U.S. tour. But after 4 shows, the band was fired because they were more popular than the headlining acts. Soon after, in 1974, the Wailers disbanded, and Bob, Bunny, and Peter each began pursuing a solo career. Bob continued to record under the name Bob Marley and the Wailers even after the breakup. His new backing band consisted of brothers Carlton and Ashton Barrett on drums and bass, Junior Marvin and Al Anderson on lead guitar, Tyrone Downey and Earl Lindo on keyboards, and Alvin Patterson on percussion. On backing vocals was his wife Rita, Judy Mowat, and Marcia Griffiths. In 1975, Bob had his first breakthrough hit with a live version of No Woman, No Cry, followed by his breakthrough album in the U.S., Rastaman Vibration, which reached the top 50 on the soul charts. On December 3rd, 1976, 2 days before he was set to be on the stage of Smile Jamaica, a concert organized to ease tension between two warring political groups, 7 men raided Bob's home in Kingston at 8:30 p.m. Rita, after noticing that the gate to their home had no one there, was pulling out of the driveway as another car was passing by and was shot from the passenger seat of the passing car. Luckily, the bullet only grazed her scalp, which left her bloody but still alive. Inside, the band was rehearsing I Shot the Sheriff. They had taken a quick break to iron out a few parts when Bob stepped out to get something to eat. All of a sudden, they recall seeing a hand rounding the door and start firing a gun. Bob was shot in the chest and arm, and his manager, Don Taylor, in the legs and torso. An employee of the band, Lewis Griffiths, was shot in the torso as well. The gunmen fled the scene quickly, leaving 0 casualties. They were transported to the university hospital and were treated for their injuries. The attack was thought to be politically motivated, possibly an attempt to get him to not perform at the concert. Nevertheless, Bob performed just 2 days later with the members of the group Zap Pow because members of the Wailers were still missing or in hiding from the attack. When asked why he went on to perform, he responded, "The people who are trying to make this world worse aren't taking a day off. How can I?" Bob left Jamaica at the end of 1976 and moved to England, where he spent 2 years in self-imposed exile. He was especially discouraged by the attack emotionally because he had spent time with the people who came to kill him. He had been giving them money and food, and it was said that he just couldn't understand how these people could betray him so terribly. While living in England, he recorded the albums Exodus and Kaya. Exodus stayed on the British charts for 56 consecutive weeks and included hits like Exodus, Waiting in Vain, Jamming, and One Love. During this time, he was arrested and convicted for possession of a small quantity of cannabis. In July of 1977, Bob was diagnosed with the type of malignant melanoma under a toenail. After seeing 2 doctors, a biopsy was finally done to confirm that it was acral litiginous melanoma. This type of melanoma is uncommon because it occurs in places that are easy to miss, such as the soles of feet or under toenails. Despite the conspiracy that it was caused by an injury during a football match earlier that year, it was said to have been caused by an already existing cancer. Bob released 11 albums under the name Bob Marley and the Wailers, 4 of those being live albums and 7 being studio albums. Babylon by Bus, a double live album released in 1978, received critical acclaim, and the final track, Jamming, captured what it was like to be at a live performance. Roger Steffens recalls that during one of the European tour shows, a guy went backstage and confessed to Bob that he would have been a part of the people who came for him that night, but he just couldn't find his gun that evening. Bob forgave him and brought him on the rest of the tour with him, and gave him a job on the tour. He later went back to Jamaica and performed at another political concert, One Love Peace Concert, to once again try to calm warring parties in Jamaica. Michael Manley, leader of the People's National Party, and rival Edward Seaga, leader of the Jamaica Labour Party, joined Bob on stage and shook hands at his request. In 1979, Bob released Survival, which is described as a defiant and politically charged album. It reflected Bob's support for the struggles of Africans, and his appearance at the Amanla Festival highlighted his strong opposition to South African apartheid. In early 1980, he was asked to perform at the celebration of Zimbabwe's Independence Day. Bob's final album, Uprising, released in May 1980, is noted as one of his most religious productions, including tracks Redemption Song and Forever Loving Jah, as heard just a moment ago. Notably, Confrontation was an album released posthumously and contained unreleased material and mixes of singles only available in Jamaica, including the hit Buffalo Soldier. Bob had continuously rejected his doctor's advice to amputate his toe because it would have hindered his performing career, and cited that it was because of his religious beliefs. Instead, his nail and nail bed were removed and replaced by a skin graft from his thigh. Despite these challenges of his illness, he continued to tour and perform and was scheduling a 1980 world tour. After the release of Uprising, the band went on a major tour of Europe and played its biggest concert, 100,000 people in Milan, Italy. Following this tour, Bob went to the U.S. and performed 2 shows at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Shortly after these performances, while on a jog through Central Park, he collapsed. He was quickly taken to the hospital, where tests showed that the cancer had spread to his brain, lungs, and liver. Bob's final concert was 2 days later at the Stanley Theater in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on September 23, 1980. His health deteriorated as his cancer continued to spread throughout his body. The remainder of the tour was canceled, and he underwent Eisel's treatment, an alternative cancer treatment, at Joseph Eisel's in Germany. It was based on the avoidance of certain foods, drinks, and other substances. After 8 months with effective treatment, Bob got on a plane back to Jamaica. During the plane ride, his vitals worsened. When the plane landed in Miami, Florida, he was taken to Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. His final words were to his son, Ziggy, saying, "On your way up, take me up. On your way down, don't let me down." Due to the spread of melanoma to his lungs and brain, Bob Marley died on May 11, 1981, at the age of 36. He was given a state funeral in Jamaica and was buried in a chapel near his birthplace in 9 Miles. His casket contained his red Gibson Les Paul guitar, a Bible opened at Psalm 23, and a stalk of cannabis. Bob Marley lived a life that fought for peace and love for all, and it is so inspiring to remember how he led his life through forgiveness. As we remember him on his birthday, let's not forget what not only he has done for the world of music, but also for what he has done for the world as a whole. Thank you so much for listening. Please share with everyone you care about. Feel free to send in your favorite person, and I'll see you on their birthday. Bye.
On their birthday.